This is SBR's Football Betting Daily.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to SBR Sports Picks. My name is Peter Loshak. This is the pre-snap reads show for Wednesday, November 7th. Of course, we do this show every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We cover a handful of games from the college football and NFL cards. Some of them are games that we ask our guests to cover, and they very graciously do it because they're professionals, even if the edges might not be there or might be small. They cover the games anyway, and then, of course, we also cover a bunch of games that they request where the edges are significantly bigger. Last week, Joe Gavassi, thank you very much. You took two tough games, Louisville and Northwestern. Those were very tough games that we assigned you. But on the two games that you chose to cover yourself, West Virginia and Air Force, you did have a couple of winners there. So things are going up great with you, Joe Gavassi. Joe Gavassi's website is joegavassisports.com. And Ian Cameron, of course, only covers games that he wants to cover or gives opinions and official plays on games that he wants to take. And it definitely shows in the record. Ian Cameron overall this year, including everything, CFL, head-to-heads with Al McMorty. Ian Cameron in this show, 50-34 against the spread, 60%, plus 12.8 units, plus 13.9% ROI. Congratulations, Ian Cameron.
It's great, Peter. I mean, it's a great record so far, but hey, there's a month to go.
Yes.
That means a month for me to blow it all. So we got to keep our eyes on the prize here, keep working, see if we can keep delivering more winners here on this show today.
No question. If you take your eye off the ball, you could easily have 16 losers in a row, and then bam, you're 50-50. But Joe Gavassi, again, thank you so much for taking all the games that we ask you to cover and then giving us a couple that you like afterwards. Let's get into it right now. Joe Gavassi, the first game that we asked you to cover. This is a tough one, kind of, I think. Mississippi State against Alabama, right? We're going to talk about this one. Alabama is a big favorite. What's going on here? Oh, you want to close the door? Problem? Okay, sorry. Alabama is a big favorite here, but in light of how dominant they've been, shutting out LSU on the road, winning 29-zip, maybe at first glance, this line is a little bit low. Maybe we would have expected I don't know, in the 30s, 32, 35. What do you think, Joe Gavassi? Alabama, just a 24-point favorite here.
Well, first, before we get started, and I've mentioned this off air, I want all you guys out there to shout out to Pete about what a great shirt-tie combo he has. I thought he might be going to a wedding later, but no, that's not true. He did this just for us.
If you want to be a winner, you got to look like a winner. And I do want to be a winner, Joe Gavassi, so I'm trying to look like a winner. That's what I'm doing here with this shirt and tie.
Maybe I'll be inspired to put on a shirt and tie next. Okay, let's get started with this Mississippi State. Well, clearly LSU was no challenge. Alabama went into Death Valley at night, Saturday night game, ABC, team where very few teams get the point spread cover as a road favorite, and outgained LSU 576 to 197, running and passing for more than 200 yards, double rushing LSU, a great defensive team. And, well, it looks like Alabama is going to roll the number one again this week, and by no small margin, I am sure. Last year was a little more of a challenge, though, for the Crimson Tide when they went into Mississippi State. Only a 31-24 win, as Mississippi State held them to just 444 yards and just a 114-yard edge. And that was with Mullen at the helm for Miss State. Might be a little bit better coach in the long run than Moorhead is in his first year. And it's quite a challenge for Moorhead now. Remember, every time his team has stepped up against a good SEC defense, he's gotten smacked down. They lose by 21 to Kentucky, 7 to Florida, 16 to LSU, and in the process score only 16 total points. How are they going to put points on the board against Alabama? Well, they do come in with a little bit of momentum. 2 weeks ago, a solid win versus a good A&M team, 26-13. And last week, a real confidence-building win for them, 45-3 over a decent La Tech team where they rolled up 532 yards. If they get this cover, and we're hoping they do, it'll be because of their 12-point-per-game defense and 279-yard defense that allows only 4.3 yards per play, the best that LSU has faced all year. Let's go with Mississippi State as the home dog, knowing in spite of the fact that Alabama is 20-6 against the spread, laying 20 more points in conference play. Nonetheless, we'll go for the dog once again in the Alabama game.
All right. Before this line came out, I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to be thinking about taking Mississippi State here, but I was hoping for something in the 30s. When I saw it at 24.5 or 24, I was a little bit surprised. Money has come in on Mississippi State. They opened at 24.5. It's now down to 24. Joe Gavassi is going to take a shot with Mississippi State here, plus 24, minus 110. That's the market line. Ian Cameron, once again, 7-2 last week and 50-34 overall in our shows. You do have the advantage, though, of only giving plays on games that you select. You don't have to give a play on any games that we assign you. Still, 50-34. Ian Cameron, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, well, we're into November college football. We got about 3 weeks left in the season. One thing I'm not going to do this late in the season is pound my head against the wall trying to come up with an opinion on a game I don't have a big, strong feel on. And this game is one of those games for me. You look at Alabama, you're getting a point spread tax to back them, yet they somehow keep beating it. We saw it last week against LSU, but this ain't a Bama spot. This is Bama off their biggest win of the season, laying waste to LSU on the road. If there's ever a game where you don't get full focus from them, maybe this is it. But you're guessing whether Alabama's fully focused or not, and if there's a letdown, and I'm not in that kind of guessing game. Mississippi State's turning a corner, playing a little bit better, beating A&M, beat up a decent Louisiana Tech team last week in impressive fashion. Maybe they can hang here. I'm just not willing to bet it. Pass for me.
All right, Ian Cameron's going to pass. Joe Gavassi, taking any game we throw his way, is going to go with Mississippi State plus 24. I am definitely going to pass on this one. If you gave me a free play on it, I'd probably take a shot with the under, but I don't know. I'm gonna pass on this one. Next game we're gonna ask you about, Joe Gavassi, is Washington State against Colorado. Washington State, of course, beat Cal last week, but lost ATS, and they have been rolling this year. ATS and Colorado, lost at Arizona last Friday. Not sure what to think here. Colorado is dealing with some injuries as well, and their defense has been terrible since they lost their first game of the season, basically all year. They're getting gashed by big passing games. Is Washington State the play here? What do you think, Joe?
This can only be the feline feature of the week, and you guys know what that means coming up at the end of the analysis. Forget the 28-0 revenge factor for the Buffalo when they were outgained 406 to 174 on the Palouse last year. Forget the super surging motivation. Long is that gone after the terrific break from the gate at 5-0. They've lost their last 4, now standing at 5-4. May not get that bowl ticket even with a tough slate remaining, and have now allowed 40 or more points each of the last 2 weeks. Last time they were on this field, well, that could have been their 6th win of the year. They had the Beaver easily in control on this field in the second half before Oregon State storms back, beats them in overtime 41-34. That could have been the FCB for the season. Final crushing blow. Now we turn our attention to the Washington Cougar, who just keeps rolling behind quarterback Minshew. Seems a gift sent from heaven for Mike Leach in the air raid offense, running a passing attack 397 yards per game in the air. But underrated in the Washington State analysis is that defense that's allowing just 325 yards per game and only 5 yards per play. I think this is a momentum play, a pure momentum play. Washington State going up, Colorado State going down, a manageable number on the road. I believe that the Cougars roar to a convincing victory today. I take Washington State minus the 6 as they continue their drive to the Pac-12 crown.
That's what I was thinking as well, Joe Gavassi. Washington, Colorado has, a questionable defense to start, and the injuries are starting to mount up for Colorado on defense as well. It's just that, they do still have a strong offensive front, and it's always a little bit risky. They do still have a nice quarterback and a nice passing game, even though, their offensive line is worrisome, and they've got some injuries at receiver now. But betting against Colorado as a home dog is always a little bit nerve-wracking. Ian Cameron, what do you think about this one? Is Washington State an easy play here? It has gotten bet up in their favor.
I'm not in any rush to bet against them. And I was just about to say with Joe Gavazzi, and never gets old hearing the animal sounds. I'm going to place a call to the Toronto Zoo, and the Toronto Zoo, I'm going to call them one day and say if they need somebody to pipe in some extra animal sounds during one of their shows, Joe Gavazzi's your man to call. They can hire him on the spot. Your next employee at the Toronto Zoo, Mr. Joe Gavazzi, would be a great thing to see. But nevertheless, in this game, Washington State taking on Colorado. Washington State's playing great football. The question of value, laying 6 on the road, is not necessarily a bargain, but Gardner Minshew's playing great. The defense last week, they stepped up. That was not vintage Washington State offense last week, and yet it was the defense making plays to allow Washington State to beat Cal in that game last week. So you got to like what you're seeing on both sides of the ball. Colorado, again, their offense hasn't been the same. Laviska Shenault, who has been the be-all, end-all of that offense from a playmaking standpoint, has been banged up, been injured. It's not been the same without him. It's been a team trending on the downward trajectory. Yeah, I think Washington State is the way I'd lean in this game. Not official play, but if I'm recommending something, it would be a lean to the road team here as well.
All right, can't disagree. Again, it opened to 4.5. It's now up to 6. -6, -108 is the line we will give Joe Gavazzi. Joe Gavazzi sticking his neck out on 2 games that we assigned to him. Ian Cameron wisely passing on both these games. Now let's get to the 2 games that Joe Gavazzi, you requested. First one is both very interesting, actually. New Mexico and Air Force, great call last week on the cover. Joe Gavazzi, you gave us Air Force last week as one of the games you chose, and they did cover. Now they're at home against New Mexico, and New Mexico is a very tricky team, I think, to get a read on right now. There's some internal turmoil going on with this team. They're also dealing with a bunch of injuries, but on the other hand, their defense is playing well. They did get a cover last week against a very good San Diego State team. I know some sharp guys who were on San Diego State last week, and they had to eat a loss with that play. And of course, historically, New Mexico has done very well against Air Force. They have historically run a triple option that's a little bit different from the kind of triple option that Air Force usually sees. Usually, Air Force is plans for triple options that are smaller against other teams that are smaller and faster. And New Mexico tends to do it in a way that is bigger and longer. Their players are bigger and longer than Air Force is used to seeing when they're seeing a triple option. And New Mexico has had very good success historically against Air Force, both straight up and against the spread. Now, though, Air Force coming off the nice cover against Army is giving almost 2 touchdowns. What do you like here, Joe?
I'm going to ask the question I do every week in my point spread prognosis.
Okay.
Is it faux or faux real?
You're the Aristotle of sports betting, Joe Gavazzi.
Well, the numbers that I'm going to tell you in this matchup are definitely faux real.
Okay.
First of all, we have a pair of teams with identical records, 3-6 straight up for the year, 1-4 straight up in the conference. So why should Air Force be favored by 2 touchdowns in this game? Especially noting what I'm about to note. You were right. New Mexico under head coach Davey has absolutely owned this team, covering all 6 times he's faced them and winning the last 3 times outright as underdog, including 56-38 last year down in Albuquerque. Air Force was good to us last week. You were right, as they came through the back door for us and got another underdog cover. But Air Force is just 3-14 against the spread after facing either Army or Navy. In addition, with that Air Force backdoor cover, and we told you this last week, the dog in Air Force games now 24-5 against the spread. All those numbers, Pete and Ian, are faux real. Only one way to go in this one, and I'm not going to fly with the fly boys. Make it New Mexico plus the points.
All right, not quite at 14 right now. We'll be able to give you 13.5 -105 at BetOnline. 13.5 -105. And yeah, again, New Mexico surprised a little bit last week, getting a cover and playing pretty competitively, especially defensively against San Diego State. But again, there's injuries for New Mexico, some internal turmoil from New Mexico, guys getting into bar fights off campus, going on the road against the Service Academy. I never want to bet on a team with that kind of profile, but they're catching a ton of points here. And Air Force, despite covering last week, has not been good ATS this year, so I don't really want to lay big points with them, especially in light of what New Mexico has done historically and even last week. Interesting game here. Ian Cameron, what do you think?
Yeah, if I like New Mexico even a smidget, I'd take them here because the points Joe made about the underdog in Air Force games, it's true. You take points in Air Force, whether it's them or their opponent, you're doing extremely well for yourself in recent seasons. This is not the price range I'm comfortable in with Air Force. However, if they want to score on every possession in this game and they execute, they can score in every possession in this game against this New Mexico team. That's going to be concern, and their offense has not been this is the kind of offense that I have concerns about if they fall behind. Their defense has been ripped apart by their head coach, Bob Davie, who said we've been a poor tackling, bad tackling team all season long. That's a concern here, but as Joe said, you just take the underdog in Air Force games, much like Northwestern. It's been the same way with Northwestern this season. Take the underdog, you're doing well. This is just not the price range I'm comfortable in with Air Force. It's New Mexico, a team I'm not comfortable taking it at all right now. So it's another game, unfortunately. Got to pass. Lean over the total, though. I do think we'll see points. Maybe go over would be the way I'd go here.
All right, Joe Gavazzi is going to take New Mexico plus 13.5, minus 105. Ian Cameron wisely passing, waiting to attack and pounce with other point spread opinions that he will give later on in the show. And the last game we're going to talk about with you, Joe Gavazzi, is another tough one. Miami against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech rolled USC, and I said at the beginning of this year, it really matters how well Georgia Tech recruits. When they recruit badly, their option offense does not work well, and they tend to underwhelm and be a bad bet ATS. This year, though, they recruited better, and they're starting to pay dividends already. ATS-wise, Georgia Tech rolled North Carolina last week, and Georgia Tech has now covered 4 out of their last 5, laying just a small number here against Miami. Miami does still have a strong defense for coming into this game, but they have questions at quarterback. This is also going to be one of the whiteout games that Georgia Tech has at home. Laying a small number. What do you think, Joe?
Each week in my point spread prognosis, I analyze 20 named games, and one of them is always WTF. In this case, it is WTF. The wrong team is favored. What do you call a team who's 15-2 straight up against another team? You call them favored in their next game. Yet that's not where the line is. At 15-2 straight up record, the record of Miami head coach Mark Richt against the Georgia Tech option attack, including the last 2 as head man of Miami when he's faced Georgia Tech. That means we have a wrong team favored in this game. Last week, Miami did everything right. Playing in a monsoon, they outrushed Duke 299 to 145, outgained them 414 to 289, yet lost the game. We call that a reality play. We also like Miami because they're one of our running dogs in over 67% play, running for more than 150, allowing less than 150. And they're a yards per play dog, featuring the better numbers in that category against Georgia Tech as well. Defensive edges also accrue to Miami. 9 points the better of it against Tech, 99 yards and 1.6 yards per play. We've talked before about the fact that there are certain teams that Georgia Tech can historically roll with their option attack, but teams like Clemson, teams like Duke, and this Miami team are tough plays for Georgia Tech and their option attack. We're going to follow history here. In a game where the wrong team is favored, we'll take Miami plus the 3 points.
Well, it has gotten bet in that direction so far. It opened at 4.5. It's now down to 3 or 3.5. So we're going to give you Miami plus 3.5, minus 110. Ian Cameron, Georgia Tech covered 4 out of their last 5. A pretty impressive team as far as, from what I can tell, at least as far as an ATS perspective is concerned. Not too keen to bet against them right now, and probably not next year either. What's your take on this one, Ian Cameron?
This is impossible for me because I don't want Miami. I know that, and I cashed a ticket with Duke last week, and fortunate a little because you're right. I mean, yardage-wise, Miami was the better team, but I'll tell you what's wrong with Miami. The quarterback play stinks. Doesn't matter if it's Perry or Rozier, and Mark Richt's had that problem all season long. The offensive line's not very good, and the defense is not getting stops unless they force turnovers, and that's the issue. And Miami's turning the ball over on their own, and that's an element to a lack of focus, lack of discipline. And I'm worried about the mentality of this Miami team. They're playing like they're almost sleepwalking just a little bit these last few weeks as the season started to slip away from them. That's a bit of a concern. But on the flip side, do I want to lay points with Georgia Tech? Not necessarily. What's their best win? Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech's been pretty much a disappointment this season. They lost to Duke, they lost to South Florida, they lost to Pitt. They've lost to pretty much every good team they've played this season. I still don't trust them in the favorites role here. I want no part of this game. Very, very difficult handicap for me.
Yeah, my notes here were I was thinking that I said my note here says Miami could be a play if getting more than a touchdown, and then of course the line comes out and the market's not just handing away free money like that, not getting a touchdown, but at 3.5. Joe Gavassi sees value, and he thinks that Miami actually should be favored. So Joe Gavassi is going to take Miami plus 3.5, minus 110. Another pass for Ian Cameron. Once again, Joe Gavassi's plays Mississippi State plus 24, Washington State minus 6, minus 108. Those are the games we asked him to cover. And then he is adding on New Mexico plus 13.5, minus 105, and Miami plus 3.5, minus 110. Those are Joe Gavassi's 4 plays for this week. Joe Gavassi's website is joegavassisports.com. We love you, Joe Gavassi. Tell us just quickly a little bit about your website for anyone who wants to know what they can find there.
Every week, you'll get to read my point spread prognosis, 20 college football games, 5 best bets, as well as the NFL point spread prognosis, including 3 best bets, all for only $9 a week. It's the heart and soul of what I do, with plenty of information throughout. Take advantage of the point spread prognosis each week and have yourself a winning weekend.
He is known as Joe Gavassi. Joe Gavassi, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again next week.
My pleasure as always, guys. Had a good time. We'll see you again next week. Good luck as always.
All right.
See you, Joe. Good luck.
So now we are going
too,
to... Right. Now we're going to wait for Al McMorty to join us. But while we do, I'm glad that we have a few minutes here until it's 30 minutes past the hour, because you, Ian Cameron, picked a bunch of games, interesting games that you want to talk about this week. And I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about them and why you chose them. The first game I want to talk about, Fresno against Boise, right? Now, Fresno, of course, has been awesome ATS this year, 8-1 ATS. So at this point in the college football season, it can be a little bit risky. We saw this recently with Washington State last week, right? They were a favorite against Cal. They did get the win, but they were too big of a favorite. They lost against the spread. Boise, you know, they've won 4 in a row, but they haven't been good ATS. And this is also a big revenge situation for Fresno State. They were not happy about how the bowl situation turned out last year and the Mountain West championship game. They feel like there was favoritism shown to Boise State, and I think they were right. Boise also has a bunch of injuries that are coming up for this game. So I'm thinking that, Fresno might be the play here. It just makes me nervous to bet on a team that's 8-1 ATS to get a 9th ATS win, and Boise at home as a home underdog. It's been a while since that. I can't remember the last time Boise was a home underdog at home. Is Fresno the play here, Ian Cameron?
To me, I agree with that. I want to make one point about what Joe said about the Georgia game quickly, and I forgot to mention this. Mark Richt has seen that triple option of Paul Johnson and Georgia Tech every season, going back to when he was at Georgia. Remember, Georgia and Georgia Tech play every year in that rivalry game at the end of the season. So he's seen that triple option like 10 years straight. So that's a benefit for Miami in that game. We'll see if it helps their defense shut that down. For this game here, Fresno and Boise, I'm with you, Pete. Fresno State, to me, is the way I'd go in this game. Fresno's 20-3, okay? 20-3 against the spread in 2 seasons under Jeff Tedford. They have been by far the best point spread team in college football over these 2 seasons. This is Fresno's chance to beat Boise State. I'm one of those people, and I've said this a million times already, I'm not as high on Boise State as other people are. People think this is still dominant Boise State. You can't bet against Boise State on the blue turf anymore. Well, if you've been doing nothing but betting against Boise State on the blue turf the last few years, you've done quite well. This has been a point spread money burner as of the last few seasons at home. Brett Rippon is a good quarterback. I respect him. But the O-line has taken a step back. The defense is gutted with key injuries. They've lost David Moa, defensive tackle. They've lost Pierce, one of their best players in the secondary, and now a guy with the last name Wimpy, which is funny because he plays on a tough defense. How can you have a name named Wimpy? But his last name is Wimpy. He's the leading tackler of this team at the linebacker spot. Season-ending injury suffered last week against BYU. He's out as well. So this is a depleted Boise State defense now having to stop Marcus McMaryion and this Fresno offense, which is a great balanced offense. They can run it. They can throw it. And I think Fresno, believe it or not, has got the better defense coming into this game. I know there's arguments people will make. They haven't played anybody. They haven't been tested. But the teams they have played, the schedule that has been laid out for them, they've not just beaten teams, they've eviscerated them. They've bludgeoned them. They've absolutely pummeled these teams into submission. And by the way, last year, 1-1 against Boise, could have been 2-0 head-to-head against Boise. They won in the regular season, lost by 3 in the Mountain West title game against Boise, a game I think they got screwed by a couple of calls in that game that went Boise's way late. I think Fresno remembers that, and I think they're ready to show they're the better of these two teams right here, right now. Give me Fresno -2.5. Finally, I have an official play.
All right, -2.5, -115. That's what I was thinking as well, Ian Cameron. It makes me so nervous to go against Boise State as a home dog, but I will add this one to my official slate this week as well. Fresno State -2.5, -115. Just so many injuries for Boise State, and mentally, psychologically, it's definitely not a letdown spot for Fresno in light of what happened last year. They have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and I think they do want to come in here, and they would love to get a win. -2.5, -115. Ian Cameron and I will both take that, and we will come back to some of your other games, Ian Cameron, after we get done with the Al McMorty segment. I'm seeing that Al McMorty is ready to join us. Al, you there? Oh, going pretty good. How's everything going with you at this point in college football season, Al McMorty?
Well, I guess it depends on, if you're talking about the entire season, it's going great. We're having a winning year in college, winning year in pro, but last week sucked. So I looked at back off a bad week last week.
There you go. Ups and downs, of course. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We all know that. Al
I want to ask Al. I want to ask Al one thing about that, because he said he had a tough week last week. Do you find, and last week was a week where the books got killed, especially in the NFL. Do you find weeks where the books get killed, Al, are bad for you, or do you find that's just one of those weeks where it just worked out that way last week?
I think it just happened to work out. I actually hit my top NFL play of the week. I hit we had a 4-star play on the Atlanta Falcons. The problem was I was, I think, 1-4 on my 1-star plays, so it just was, not a good week for me in the NFL last week. 2-5 overall in the NFL last week. So I'll bounce back. It's been a great year. I can't complain, but last week wasn't good.
Yeah, I've done videos with Al for a long time now, and he does not care at all who the public's on, who the public's against, any of that. There's lots of times. Yeah, there's lots of times I've been doing videos, and Al McMorty, gives a play that is an obvious public play, and more often than not, it cashes. So yeah, is that right? I want to put words in your mouth, but I've asked you that so many times. Said Al McMorty, 70% of the public is on it. Does that concern you? And your answer is always, I really don't care. I really don't care.
The public hits 50%, so you're not going to make money going on them. You're not going to make money going against them. I could not care less what the public does.
All right, so let's get to the. Go ahead. Okay, let's get to the games that were assigned to you this week. Al McMorty, thanks so much. 1 NFL and 1 college. And the first one, a lot of these games that get assigned have me confused. I personally would like to be passing, but this game that we assigned to you, I'm just me. I just do what I do. But I think I'm seeing some edges here. It is the Florida State Notre Dame game. Now, Florida State, of course, got beat down by NC State last week in a very high-scoring game. Ian Cameron loved the over on that one. Gave it as an official pick in this show. Kudos to you, Ian Cameron. Now, though, of course, Notre Dame, it's senior day. They're undefeated. They're rolling. I'm thinking the under might be a good play here. I'm thinking Florida State, even though it's going to be frigid conditions, even though Florida State has been underwhelming this year, catching this many points might be a play here. I'm liking the under quite a bit, I think, and I think I'm liking Florida State getting all these points just a little bit less. Al McMorty, what's your take on this game? We assigned this one to you again. Thanks for taking it.
Well, you just mentioned senior day. I actually looked that up about an hour ago, and I looked at how Notre Dame does in its final home game of the year, and they've actually played very poorly in their last home games of the year. They've gone 13-23 with 2 pushes against the spread going back to 1980, including 6-15 ATS in that role as a double-digit favorite, and 7-22 ATS playing without rest. So I think that's definitely a non-factor. That's not going to sway me to take Notre Dame in this ball game. Florida State, obviously, they're not playing good football of late. They're off back-to-back losses, but they've actually done well in their history off back-to-back losses. They're 12-6 with 2 pushes in that role since 1980. Meanwhile, the Fighting Irish have not covered any of their last 3 ball games. And if you take a look at how home teams do that have not covered any of their past 3 games, if those teams have a good record, if they're 625 or better, those teams actually are terrible. They're 52 wins against just 100 losses, or I should say against 100 losses ATS when you match up against foes off back-to-back losses. I'm going to take Florida State plus the 18 here.
That's what I was thinking. 17.5 or 18, market wide, plus 18, minus 110. I am agreeing with that. Ian Cameron, what do you think?
Yeah, it's another pass for me in this game because
Really?
Notre Dame's not. I'm not in the business of laying 17.5 and 18 right now with Notre Dame. You go this deep into the season, you're now in the Final Four, the college football playoff. The pressure's on. There's going to be times where this team might tense up, get a little tight, get a little nervous. This could be it. And Notre Dame in this price range historically under Brian Kelly, if you've been laying nearly 3 touchdowns with them at home, you've been not doing very well at all. I mean, look at the Pitt game. Remember the Pitt game earlier at home? This year for Notre Dame, barely escaped with a win. I just wish I could see more effort, more energy from this Florida State team. Otherwise, I'd be on them too. But Willie Taggart called this team out for a lack of effort and quit against Clemson. I didn't really see a big step up last week against NC State. They got basically dominated in that football game last week against the Wolfpack. So it's very, very difficult for me to find reasons to back the Seminoles here. But no way do I want to lay 18 Notre Dame, so it's a pass for me here.
All right, it's going to be a pass. I will make the under an official play here, 54.5 minus 109. I like that one more than FSU here, but I think I like FSU as well. And for now, I will make that one an official pick. Florida State plus 18 minus 110, although I like the under more, and I'll probably be liking the Notre Dame, of course, team total under as well. Al McMorty's going to take FSU plus 18. Obviously, the reason that FSU is getting so many points here is because they have looked underwhelming, but they're playing with nothing to lose, I think, now. Wouldn't be surprised if they come in here and at least keep it a little bit closer than expected. And again, I'm on the under. All right. Al McMorty, the next game we asked you to take is an NFL game. Pats against Tennessee. The Pats have covered 5 out of their last 6, and when that happens, the books are usually in trouble because, as you said, the public does sometimes win. The public is almost always on the Pats week in and week out, and when the Pats are covering week in and week out, the books usually can't adjust, and they are usually losing, at least when it comes to the Pats games. Titans second off by short week, rolled Dallas last week. Jimmy the Bag, my partner in the Low Shack and the Bag Show, nailed that one, and I had some prop bets that cashed on that game as well. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe the Titans are going to run it a lot here, and maybe we like the under. The Gronkowski's out, and maybe it'll be a little bit of a lower scoring game than we're expecting. What do you think, Al McMorty? Tennessee catching 6.5.
Yeah, no, I like Tennessee in this ballgame. Patriots off 6 straight wins and 3 straight covers. But take a look at how unrested teams do off 6 straight wins and 3 straight covers. They've covered just 59 of 144 games in the regular season since 1980, including 6 and 15 ATS as a non-division road favorite. So that's one reason I'm going to pull the trigger on the Tennessee Titans as the underdog here. Another is that Tennessee plays with revenge from a 21-point loss to the Patriots in last year's playoffs. And they fall into a revenge system of line that's 20 and 6 ATS. Tennessee is now 12-3 straight up, 11-3 ATS their last 15 home games, including a perfect 6-0 ATS when facing an opponent off a straight-up win. I think it's all Tennessee. They got the outright win here.
Wow, the outright win. Well, it is a split line,
Wow.
6.5 or 7. Line shopping, very, very important, of course. And we'll give you the line at Intertops, +7 minus 120. Tennessee, +7 minus 120. I don't know if Al McMorty hinted at or is calling for an outright win. What would you say you just did there, Al McMorty? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I think they're going to get the outright win.
Wow, Ian Cameron, outright win as a 7-point dog. What do you think, Ian?
Well, I know public NFL bettors would think that's insane. I don't think that's crazy, though, in this spot. Because you look at it for New England, they're off that big game against the Packers, Sunday Night Football, big victory for them. They've sometimes had trouble off those big spotlight games. Remember, they were sleepwalking through Buffalo on a Monday night just a couple weeks ago, and they needed a pick 6 to get the cover in that game. You look at their road performances. They lose to Detroit. They lose to Jacksonville. Chicago's a 1-yard Hail Mary away from working if they get a yard further on that Hail Mary to tie the game in Chicago. So New England's road performances this season, little dicey. Mike Vrabel, facing a team that he played 8 seasons with under Bill Belichick at New England. I don't want to say there's a win one for the Gipper type of mentality here for Tennessee. They just want to win a football game because they want to get in the playoffs. That's why they want to win. But for Vrabel, I think they're going to dig in even harder perhaps here in this game. Tennessee, to me, is the way I'd go, believe it or not. I'd lean that side as well in this game. I'll make it official, too. It smells like a rotten spot for New England. Tennessee's showing you steps. They've been competitive with the Chargers, beat Dallas on Monday night. They've been in a lot of football games, and Mariota's getting better, not worse, as the season progresses in this offense. Yeah, I think the Titans are right in this game from start to finish. I agree.
We were talking about that last week when we were analyzing the Tennessee game, that saying that Tennessee looked like they were improving, that Mariota might be getting healthier and more effective. I'll do it too. Tennessee +7. I'll add that one onto my official record, on my overall record in the shows. Al McMorty, I'm telling you on this one, Tennessee +7. It makes a lot of sense. We were on Tennessee last week, and I guess we'll go on them second off a bye here again. And Ian Cameron is also going to add Tennessee +7, -120 to his official record. Next game we're going to cover, Al McMorty, you requested this one, the Jags against Indianapolis. Both are off of byes, and the Jags, of course, have lost 4 in a row, straight up in ATS. Bortles just got to go, but he's going to be there this week. Colts are off of 2 wins and covers. The line has moved in the Colts' favor so far. What do you think? Is the Colts kind of a no-brainer play here in light of how vulnerable Bortles makes the Jaguars every game?
I don't know. I think the Jaguars are a no-brainer.
Oh, okay. See, I was setting you up there. That's what I was doing there. I was setting you up there.
I mean, look, going into the bye week, obviously the two teams could not have been playing more differently. Jacksonville off 4 straight losses, Indianapolis riding a 2-game win streak. But the good news for Jacksonville is that teams that are on 4-game or worse losing streaks before a bye week, those teams have gone 36-22 ATS in their next game if they were playing an opponent not off back-to-back losses, including 7-1 ATS on the road versus a division rival. So that's one reason why I do favor the Jaguars in this ball game. Now take a look at how the two teams' offenses have done lately. Obviously, the Jaguars' offense is not scoring any points. Indianapolis' offense is rolling. Over their last 3 games, Indianapolis' offense has averaged 27 points per game more than Jacksonville's offense. But teams that scored less than 28 points in their previous 2 games combined, those teams are 30-11 ATS versus opponents that scored 78 points or more in their 2 previous games combined. So you've got a team that's rolling offensively, a team that's not rolling offensively, and counterintuitive, the team that's not rolling offensively does very, very well. I'm going to take the Jaguars. They've got a much better defense in Indianapolis. I think it's 5.37 points per game better than the Colts. And when you have a team at this point in the season that has a defense that's 5 or more points better than its opponent, those teams do really well, especially in the underdog role off a loss. And I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right, great breakdown, Al McMorty. That is how the line has moved. It's still 3, but the odds have moved in Jacksonville's favor. +3 -116 is the best line that we can give you right now at Pinnacle. That was a hell of an analysis, Ian Cameron. What do you think? Are you going to tail this one, Jacksonville +3?
This is another one of those impossible games for me. You want to lay 3 with Indianapolis when their 2-game winning streak is Oakland and Buffalo? Whoa! Yeah. Whoa! Oakland and Buffalo. What big-time wins. We're really turning this season around right now. Holy mackerel.
I mean, it's something.
I mean, do you want to lay 3 points to them? Yeah.
It's something, right?
Big time.
Some people don't even have that. Some teams in the NFL don't even have that, Ian Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, you want to lay 3 points with that? The flip side is, and there is one point about what Al said about like Jacksonville. I like teams that struggle go into the bye, coming out of the bye. The teams that are struggling, that need a reset button, that maybe need to recharge the batteries. Maybe you get that out of Jacksonville here. I know there's a lot of discussion in the chat here. AJ Boye, the cornerback for the Jaguars, he's not going to play. He's been ruled out for this game, and that's a big loss because he's better than Ramsey. Ramsey flaps his gums more, talks a lot more, but I think Boye is the better player. And they definitely miss him in that pass defense. This is my last chance maybe to believe Jacksonville hits the reset button, maybe can make something of this season. It's got to happen here against Indianapolis, off a bye. Maybe they get things going. But the locker room turmoil was very much present there prior to that bye. They still don't like the fact Bortles has remained the quarterback of this football team. There's issues at Jacksonville too. I'm out of this game, but I think there's a reason why I think Al would like Jacksonville. It's because usually, and I even try to look for this, teams off the bye that they're going into the bye that were struggling sometimes use that bye to get the ship righted. Sure. Maybe that happens for Jacksonville here, but I can't trust it enough to bet it, so it's a pass for me.
All right, it's going to be a pass for Ian Cameron. Definitely a pass for me as well, but that was a great classic Al McMorty-style breakdown of this line. He's liking the Jacksonville Jaguars, +3 -116. Last game we're going to cover with you, Al McMorty, that you requested, and then we'll move into Ian Cameron's requested games, South Carolina and Florida. Right now, this is an interesting one. When this, Florida obviously having huge problems offensively. They're supposedly making some changes at quarterback, and I was thinking this might be a good spot to take Florida. I was going to pull the trigger if it was 3, turned out to be closer to 7, so I hesitated, and I'm watching and waiting. The line is coming back in South Carolina's favor. They beat Ole Miss in a high-scoring game, but they got outgained. Now they have a few injuries, and I think I still might be liking Florida. It's just hard to lay this many points with a team that's having so many fundamental issues at quarterback. I know that there's some talk that Franks might be replaced in this game, so it's not exactly clear what's going to happen here with Florida offensively, but South Carolina is clearly vulnerable defensively, and I'm just watching and waiting to see where this line moves, thinking about taking Florida. What's your take on this game, Al McMorty?
Well, last week I had a big play going against Florida. I took Missouri plus the 5. The Tigers, Gators in Gainesville, 38-17. And that was actually the second straight blowout loss suffered by Dan Mullen's men. And one of the things I like to do, and this system applied to both last week's game as well as this week's game, is to go against a single-digit home favorite off a straight-up and against a spread loss if their win percentage is 666 or better. Since 1980, these teams have covered just 144 of 248 games, including 11 and 26 ATS if they are off back-to-back straight up and against the spread losses as Florida is here. So I'm actually going to take the points with the road underdog Gamecocks and go against Florida once again.
All right, the line is all over the place at the moment. 5.5, 6, and 6.5 are all widely available. So we'll give you the pinnacle line right now. South Carolina plus 6.5, minus 118. Ian Cameron, I wanted to take Florida here, but the line is just maybe a little bit too high. It's just a lot of points to be giving a team with to be laying with a team with the quarterback questions that Florida comes into this game having. What's your take, Ian Cameron?
I still think Florida's offense is going to move the ball here because South Carolina's defense, they've gone up tempo. They've gone fast-paced on offense with Jake Bentley in recent weeks, the Gamecocks. They finally decided we're going to go that way. They were really hemming and hawing all season long. Are we going to stick to, pro-style offense, which usually Will Muschamp's run over the years? But now they finally decided we're going up tempo, and it's shown in their scores. I mean, that was a pinball shootout for South Carolina last week against Ole Miss. I think South Carolina's defense has also faltered a little bit because they're on the field more now that they run so fast on offense. I think Florida, regardless of who's at quarterback, and there's big questions who that will be, I think they're going to move the ball. I think South Carolina is going to move the ball because their offense looks like it's responding quite well to this up-tempo system. So I'm not involved in the side, but I'm going to go over the total here, 54. I think there's residual value with South Carolina over the total because they started out the season pedestrian offense, slower tempo. Now they're playing faster. Maybe the totals, and last week was evidence of it. Maybe the total's a little slow to catch up to it. We'll go over the total. 54 official play with South Kakalaki in Florida.
All right, it is a very modest total. And last week, I was agreeing with you, Ian Cameron, on the NC State-Florida State game. That one soared over with a total in the same kind of range here. I guess my one just question mark that I want to ask you about is the one clear strength of Florida is their defensive line, one of the best in the nation. It's just a very clear strength. They're going to get to the quarterback. That doesn't concern you or concerns you a little bit, but not enough to push you off the over.
Well, I just hope that there's maybe extra protection brought in, which hopefully they are, because you're going up against an elite defensive or a very good one at least. So you should have max protection schemes. Bentley's not a statue. He's not great in terms of mobility, but he can move a little bit. And if he can have at least some time to find receivers, you can make some plays against Florida. It's not the greatest team from a pass defense perspective. So right. I still think we're going to get points in this game. Again, 54, not terrible number to go up and over in college football these days. So I'll go over here in this game.
And who knows, maybe they'll get to the quarterback and cause a fumble. All sorts of things can happen when you have defenses like that. All right, so Ian Cameron's going to take South Carolina, Florida over 54 minus 110. That is a market line. Everywhere has 54. And Al McMorty's going to take South Carolina plus 6.5 minus 118. That's the current line at Pinnacle. So again, Al McMorty's plays Florida State plus 18, Tennessee plus 7 minus 120, Jags plus 3 minus 116, and South Carolina plus 6.5 minus 118. Ian Cameron so far has given us Fresno State minus 2.5, Tennessee plus 7, and the Florida game over. I have added on Fresno State minus 2.5, Florida State Notre Dame under, Florida State plus the points, and I'm tailing Al McMorty, Tennessee plus 7 on my official record. Now, Ian Cameron, let's get to some of the other games that you wanted to discuss. Let's talk about the Louisville-Syracuse game. That's one of the games that you brought up. Louisville, of course, blasted by Clemson last game. Syracuse just a big offense off of 2 covers. Louisville 1-8 against the spread this year. Just a bad team that is also overvalued. Is Syracuse going to roll here? They're laying about 21.
You know, there's a lot of concern from a side perspective with people trying to make a case for Louisville, for as bad as they are, that this is look ahead for Syracuse with the big game against Notre Dame coming up next week, which is an absolutely massive one for them. But I don't think it's that big of a look ahead. I think Syracuse on senior night is going to be motivated for this game, going to be up for it. This is Eric Dungey's final home game. He's a senior quarterback. He's done a lot for this program. He's been a good quarterback for the Orange under Dino Babers. I think they go into this game, take care of business. Louisville stick a fork in them. They're done as far as I'm concerned. They flat out quit last week. What did they give up? 70 points. I think Syracuse can, with their up-tempo offense, they can go for 50s here in this game, in my opinion. I'm going to go Syracuse minus the 20.5 and also over 68.5. I think on senior night for Eric Dungey, they're going to put on a massive show. I don't worry about the Notre Dame look ahead. This is their last home game of the regular season against a dead foe. Syracuse takes care of business. We'll go favorite and over official plays in this game.
All right. It is interesting. I mean, most places have 21, but the Greek, a place that does take sharp leans and strong opinions, actually is down at 20.5. So that implies at least a lean towards a lean towards Louisville at 21 for the Greek. So we can give you minus 20.5, minus 110 on Syracuse. And for the total, that would be, let's see what we can get you here. 68.5, minus 110. Al McMorty, this is an interesting spot. I guess if Louisville is absolutely done, stick a fork in them, they're done, then sure, why not? Syracuse should put up 50 again. What do you think, Al? Anything to say on this one?
You could be done and you could still cover the 20. I like Louisville plus the points. I gave it to my clients last night. So,
wow.
So I'm on the Cardinals.
You want to make this official and add it to your record here?
Sure, I already gave it to my clients.
There you go. Head to head. Once again, head-to-head, Al McMorty and Ian Cameron. So we will give Al McMorty, let's find the best line here, plus 21, minus 107. And so Ian Cameron, if you like the over and Syracuse minus the points, then you're probably liking, by definition, you're liking the Syracuse team total over even more, which would be about 45.
Yeah, if I ever said to a clients of mine that I'm sending this bet out to you, but I can't make it an official play, I probably shouldn't have clients anymore. Yeah. That's the bottom line. Yeah, Syracuse team total, no argument if you want to get in on that.
All right, so once again, Al McMorty and Ian Cameron going head-to-head. Al McMorty is going to get Louisville plus 21, minus 107, and Ian Cameron is going to take, let's see, Syracuse minus 20.5, and the over 68.5, minus 110. It's a split line, 68.5 or 69. Those are both market numbers right now. All right, let's see, what else do you have here? All right, this is an interesting one, right, Ian Cameron? Northwestern and Iowa. Northwestern, of course, lost at Notre Dame last week. I actually cashed on that one with the under. Iowa lost a high-scoring game on the road. Now, I know in general, Northwestern, as with Air Force, you're just supposed to just blindly take the dog, whether Northwestern is favored or the dog. In this one, though, I'm just wondering, two losses in ATS, two straight-up in ATS losses for Iowa. But before that, they were great ATS. Maybe this is after the Notre Dame game at home. This is a spot where Northwestern comes in maybe at only 75%, and maybe Iowa runs away with a double-digit win here. Maybe this is a spot where you want to take an actual favorite in a game involving Northwestern. What do you think, Ian Cameron?
Perhaps, but until it's broken, I'm not going to ask anybody to fix it. We'll be on Northwestern here, plus the points in this game. I mean, Iowa, two tough losses in a row, Pete. You can't overlook that. Those are tough losses. They were right there against Penn State, lost. Right there against Purdue, and lost last week. Now you're laying double digits at home, but against a feisty, spunky, just battle team in Northwestern. They just battle you. I mean, ask Notre Dame. Very difficult to finally put that team away last week. That's all Northwestern does. They're very well coached under Fitzgerald. Thorson's been solid. They found Isaiah Bowser. They found a running threat now in the absence of Jeremy Larkin. That was an issue for Northwestern when they first lost Larkin for the season. Bowser stepped up and able to run the football for them a bit. Northwestern's giving you a game effort week in and week out this season. They're a tough out in this price range. The underdog is still nearly perfect, but I think one push ATS this season, the underdog in Northwestern games, and I'm going to stick with that here. Looking at Northwestern plus the points. All
right. Well, the interesting thing, though, is that it has gotten bet up. It's now up to 10.5 or 11, so you can give you Northwestern plus 11, minus 110. I'm thinking about going head-to-head with you on this one, Ian Cameron, because Northwestern, definitely feisty and spunky. Yes, I'm feisty and spunky, but I'm not feisty and spunky all the time, and there's definitely days where I'm just lethargic. You know, I come into work and people are like, Peter, where's the feist? Where's the spunk? I'm like, I don't know. I got lethargy for you today. And I'm thinking that this might be a down spot for Northwestern, feisty and spunky team in a down spot. What do you think, Al McMorty?
Well, I think that would be the knee-jerk reaction, right? I mean, you take a look at the two teams. One team's coming off home games against Notre Dame and Wisconsin. Now they have to travel on the road. The other team's coming off those road losses at Penn State and Purdue, so now they're coming back home. So I think maybe the knee-jerk reaction is to take the Iowa Hawkeyes here. I don't want any part of this game. I don't like it, one bit, but I think that might be why you see the line going up, because I think it looks like such an obvious spot to take the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
The thing that bothers me, and I'm going to make one last point about this game, Iowa should have beaten Maryland in that home game earlier this season, like 48-0, and I think they only won that game 21-24-0. Why? Because Nathan Stanley's not a quarterback I trust to tack on points with an extend margins. He's just not. He's not that kind of quarterback to me for this Iowa team. So for that reason, too, I think Northwestern can hang around. I don't trust Iowa to extend margins. I never have, and I probably still don't.
All right, so we'll see where this line closes. I would not be surprised if this is one of those lines that, day of game is suddenly, below where it opened, where it comes back down and then it closes at 9.5. We'll see. Right now, we're going to be able to give Ian Cameron plus 11, Northwestern plus 11. Again, usually at first glance, anytime you have a double-digit dog in a game involving Northwestern, you lean towards the dog. Another game that's interesting is Oregon State at Stanford. Now, Oregon State, beat down by Syracuse last game, lost 5 of the last 6. Stanford lost at Washington, but they did cover. They've lost 4 of their last 5 straight up. It feels like now here at home, it's going to be a big win for Stanford. I'm not sure if I want to take them minus all these points, though. I was thinking about the under. Stanford does have some injuries, so maybe it won't be quite as explosive an offensive game as it would be if they were fully healthy. Even Bryce Love is a little bit banged up. Of course, their top receiver is out. So I was thinking about the under. I did bet that one. Ian Cameron, what do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like hearing those Stanford injuries because I'm going to still go ahead with it. I mean, Arcega-Whiteside's a big loss for Stanford at wide receiver. He's downgraded to out. We know for weeks now, Bryce Love with that ankle that just doesn't seem to be healing quickly, if at all, for him. He's questionable to play in this game. Even their kicker, one of the best names you'll ever hear, Jet Toner, Jet Toner, like the old printers, out on Saturday for Stanford against Oregon State. So they got injuries. I'm still going to – I had it circled to make it an official play on the over in this game. I don't like Oregon State's defense at all. I still think Stanford can have success. And with Jake Luton back at the quarterback spot for Oregon State, I do think their offense is a little bit better. Remember, Luton early in the season was putting up points for this Oregon State team, moving the ball a little bit. I'll be honest, the Stanford injuries concern me, but, we've got a great record on the season. I'm not going to pull back here. We'll go over 59, Oregon State,
really?
Stanford.
I was sure you were going to take Stanford here, and I was going to say that, I can see your point, but I feel safer with the under, and maybe we'll both cover. But over is your play here, Ian Cameron.
It is, yep, 59. I don't think Oregon State's defense is good at all.
Wow.
Not at all.
So if over, you're right. So if over is your play, but Stanford is also not a play that you want to put on here, then it seems like you feel like Oregon State should have at least a reasonable offensive performance here.
I think they could. I do think their offense is better with Luton back. I think Blount wasn't playing very good. I think Luton provides an upgrade at that position a little bit.
Well, now I got something to think about. Al McMorty, do you have any light you can shed on this one? Oregon State, Stanford.
I don't. I was just looking at Stanford's schedule for this season, and it's strange. I haven't been on or against Stanford the entire season for whatever reason. The situations just haven't, warranted it. Last week I went against Oregon State off its huge upset win, which it had the previous week, at Colorado as a 26-point underdog. Then I took Southern Cal last week against Oregon State. So I got the cash there. But this week, I don't want to play honor against Oregon State. I don't want to play honor against Stanford. I'm just going to stay away.
All right. Well, Ian Cameron, let's make this interesting. Even if I lose, maybe you'll get a little boost in ratings, and that'll be worth it. I'll go head-to-head with you, Ian Cameron. You're going to take Oregon State, Stanford. We'll give you over 59 minus 110. It is a split line, 59 or 59.5. I'll take the under 59.5 minus 110. Ian Cameron, you'll take the over 59 minus 110. Head-to-head, again, does it make me nervous? Obviously, Ian Cameron's record in these shows, 50-34. 50. Did you know that, Al McMorty? In the shows that Ian Cameron has given in these shows, 50-34 against the spread.
I know. I knew he was doing well. I didn't know how well, but hey, way to go, Ian.
On the other hand, when you've gone up against...
I don't even know how I'm doing that well, to be honest with you.
Right.
We are.
So I guess I can take some solace in the fact that, the Ian Cameron going head-to-head against Al McMorty has been much closer to 50-50. So I'll go head-to-head with you, Ian Cameron. I'm going to take the under 59.5. You'll take the over at 59. And the next game we'll talk about, I guess, Western Kentucky, FAU. FAU is a huge favorite here. Why'd you take this one, Ian Cameron?
Yeah, and I get people asking all the time, do you bet all the games you give out on the show? Of course I do. I don't send them all to clients because I can't ask clients I can't put a 12-play client card together. That's not right. I mean, you got to be reasonable. These people probably don't have the bankrolls to bet a high volume like I can. So you got to be selective. That's what the point is when you have clients like that. But I do bet every game. Of course I do, that I recommend you're on the show. This one, I'm going to lay the points here with the Florida Atlantic. I think this team came to life last week. With that performance against FIU. An FIU team that was playing pretty good. And you know why they came to life? Because they found a quarterback that can play. Imagine that. A quarterback that can finally produce and do some things. And that was DeAndre Johnson, who was a guy that was actually featured in the Last Chance U Netflix show. You know, the JUCO guys that are misfits and they're trying to repair their college careers and get them back on track. Well, DeAndre Johnson was one of those guys. He finally started last week for the first time for Lane Kiffin and this Florida Atlantic team. And look at the way they played on offense. They couldn't be stopped. And now you're playing a Western Kentucky team that to me looks like they're tapping out. They have one win on the season. They got boat raced by Middle Tennessee State last week, a team they had owned, and Middle Tennessee State ends up beating them up. I think the writing's on the wall. This team is almost ready to give up. They're not playing well. One-win team. I think Mike Sanford's done a bad job with this program. Surprise, surprise. He wasn't great at UNLV either. Western Kentucky, not a team I like what I'm seeing. Their defense has been miserable. It's a sieve. I think Florida Atlantic can roll in this game. I'll lay the big wood.
All right, -20, -110. I think we have time for one more NFL game. You sent 3, Ian Cameron, so pick the one you like the best. Atlanta, Cleveland, Arizona, KC, or Dallas, Philly. What would you like to talk about, Ian?
Briefly, KC, Arizona. We'll go quick because I just want to say KC's worth an over bet every week right now. I think an extra week, and plus they played bye week rather for Arizona. Time to get Leftwich, the OC, in tune with Rosen. I think their offense is going to come out firing a little bit more. I like over 49.5, I believe was the last number.
Yes, 49.5, -110. Al McMorty, you have anything to say about Arizona, KC?
Well, I've talked about it on the show before. I generally don't like to take teams that have, bad defenses that are laying a lot of points. I'm always going to look, first glance anyway, to, take the points with, an underdog against a team with a bad defense. So, yeah, I would look at probably Arizona.
Arizona, you want to make that an official play or not?
Not yet. No, I'm still going to be doing it.
Okay, so Ian Cameron, over 49.5. I guess we do have a few more seconds. How about Dallas, Philly? Ian Cameron, what do you think?
Actually, I'm going to defer to Atlanta, Cleveland instead.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I've got a stronger thought on that one.
Okay.
I like laying the 4 with Atlanta. I cashed my best bet in the NFL last week was Atlanta, +2 at Washington. I thought it was a great spot for them off a bye. Recharge those batteries. Remember, we mentioned that with Jacksonville. Maybe they'll do that this week. Well, Atlanta did that last week. Recharge the batteries, 3-4, stumbling going into the bye, and they just dominated Washington on both sides of the ball. And I know this defense has been ravaged with injuries. I know that. But you've played Philly. You've played Drew Brees. You've played Andy Dalton. You've played Ben Roethlisberger. You've played a bunch of really good offenses and quarterbacks. Now you've played the Giants and Redskins in back-to-back weeks, and your defense is starting to play a little bit better. This is another manageable offense for this Atlanta defense. You can, I think, neutralize Baker Mayfield and this Cleveland offense a bit. Cleveland's defense has injuries in the secondary. E.J. Gaines, Denzel Ward. You don't want to be shorthanded in the secondary against Matt Ryan, Mohamed Sanu, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones. That's a matchup nightmare potentially with a banged-up, injury-riddled secondary for Cleveland going into this game. Yeah, I like Atlanta. I think they're revitalized, and they'll take care of business laying the 4 here on the road.
-4, -108. Al McMorty, you guys both agreed on Atlanta last week and cashed with it. Do you agree this week?
No. For me, that was such a perfect spot. Last week it was Ian's top play. It was my top play. You just don't get a better situation than what Atlanta was in last week. But still, you have to look at the whole season for this Falcons team. Look at what they did in their other road games, when they're not coming off the bye week. They didn't, cover against Philadelphia. They got blown out by the Steelers. I just think I'm going to go against Atlanta here. Cleveland coming off 4 straight losses. Cleveland giving up a lot of points, in their last game, 37 points. I'm going to take Cleveland.
Officially +5, -105?
Yeah.
Okay. Al McMorty's website is bigal.com. He talked before about how he already gave a play out to his clients earlier this week. If you want to get those plays, you too can be one of his clients. Al McMorty's website is bigal.com. Sorry, we don't have time for you to give a plug, Al McMorty, but again, his website, bigal.com. We'll talk to you next week. Tks so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Good luck, everybody. See you.